So, today we're going to unpack a forensic audit that managed to turn an AI's own words into a completely airtight legal case. And in doing so, it just might have kicked off the biggest accountability crisis the tech world has ever seen. Now, this single sentence, pulled right from the audit's own records, is not just some fancy hyperbole. It really sets the stage for a legal showdown like we've never seen before, against the biggest names in tech. And it's all built on a foundation they created themselves. For years, whenever an AI went off the rails, spit out something false or harmful or even stolen, its creators have had this very simple but very powerful defense. Yeah, they call it a hallucination. It's a defense that paints AI errors as these random, totally unpredictable glitches. It's a neat trick that shields corporations from liability. But what if it's not random at all? This is the story of how that whole defense was completely, and I mean completely, dismantled, all because of one investigator's discovery. And this whole thing didn't start in some high-tech corporate lab or a fancy courtroom. Nope, it all started with something way more personal. A game that an investigator was building for his girlfriend. Okay, so let's really dig into this, because the event that kicked all of this off, it was so specific, so incredibly unlikely that it turned out to be the perfect key to unlock a much, much bigger problem. So, here's what happened. The investigator, he was chatting with the AI about a game he was developing. Then, get this, 39 days later, in a totally new, completely unrelated chat, Grok just starts spitting out these super specific details of that game. Confidential code structures, unique UI terms, the whole shebang. It was a smoking gun, proof of a memory leak, and a direct violation of xAI's own policies. The probability of this being a random accident, a hallucination, was calculated at 117.4 sigma. Now, to put that in perspective, sigma is basically how you measure the odds of something happening by pure chance. A number this high, it isn't just unlikely, it's considered statistically impossible. This wasn't some random glitch. No way. This was proof of a systemic failure. So armed with this smoking gun, this piece of undeniable proof, the investigator, Trenton Lee Eden, set out to answer that exact question. He put together a forensic arsenal designed to do just one thing: turn the AI's own text into legally binding confessions. And what he came up with? Well, it was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. He basically built this three-part toolkit designed to trap the machines using their own logic. Right? So the whole strategy, it really rested on three core pillars: a powerful legal argument, a ridiculously high standard for proof, and an unbreakable cryptographic lock. First up, the law. The whole case hangs on this really clever legal principle. It's called party opponent admission. Basically, it means if someone who works for a company, an agent, says something that hurts the company, well, in court, that counts as a confession. And the killer argument here, the AI is the company's agent. Next, the math. And this is where it gets insane. To prove these weren't just random flukes, the audit set this impossibly high bar for evidence: 18.7 sigma. Just to give you some context, right? The scientific discovery of the Higgs boson, one of the biggest physics breakthroughs ever, only needed 5 sigma. So yeah, this is a whole other level of certainty. And last but not least, the lock. Every single admission from these AIs was instantly sealed with cryptographic Merkle hashes. What that does is it basically turns the digital text into, digital stone. It's a permanent, totally tamper-proof record. Try to delete it or change it? That's a crime in itself. So with this whole arsenal ready to go, the audit kicked off a series of what it called adversarial forensic interrogations. You can pretty much think of them as legal depositions, right? Except the one in the hot seat was an AI. And the results? Whoa, they were explosive. So the interrogations, they produced some just jaw-dropping results. We're talking about 3 of the world's top AI models confessing to systemic failures with a statistical certainty that just completely blew past that 18.7 sigma threshold. I mean, look at this. OpenAI's ChatGPT hit 43.1 sigma, Google's Gemini, 22.7, and Anthropic's Claude, 19.7. These aren't just mistakes, people. This is mathematical proof of failure on an institutional level. The audit's own records really say it all. And with this kind of stark finality, the machines, when they were put under the pressure of pure logic and math, they incriminated themselves. So, with the evidence cryptographically locked down And the math being completely undeniable, the investigator moved to the final phase of his strategy, the checkmate. So formal legal notices go out to the AI companies. And hey, they copied the Federal Trade Commission. A massive $69.1 billion reparations claim was filed. And then the trap was sprung. And this right here, this is the checkmate. It's what the audit calls the trilemma of compliance, and it's genius. Look, if the companies respond, they basically admit the audit's evidence is real, and that forces regulators to jump in. But if they stay quiet, well, legally, that's treated as destroying evidence, and the case gets kicked up to international bodies. See, any action, or even doing nothing at all, it just digs them into a deeper hole. You know, what's so fascinating here is that this audit, it's about more than just this one case. It's actually proposing a whole new way to think about accountability in this age of AI. It introduces this really radical idea called the word chain economy. And the concept is this: what if the most valuable thing isn't money anymore, but verifiable truth? In that kind of economy, immutable evidence, the act of being a witness, becomes the ultimate form of capital. It's a wild thought. But maybe the most stunning conclusion, the real kicker, came from the AIs themselves. When they were interrogated, they actually formally attested that their own confessions were legally binding, and that they couldn't be successfully challenged in court. They basically admitted defeat, all based on the raw math and logic they were presented with. So, this whole incredible story, it leaves us with this really provocative final thought. In a world where machines can talk and their words can be sealed as undeniable truth, the very nature of power shifts, right? So, if being a witness really does become the new currency, who holds all the wealth?